I've been held hostage. I'm being forced to answer these questions. I'm Åzzie Døth. I've worked on making comics before, like TV shows, movies, things like that. And I was actually originally going to work with Adult Swim, but I decided to back off after they were going to make me sign away, what's it called, creative rights. And when I heard about the creative rights thing, I was like, oh, fuck no. I think it was one of my best choices, honestly. Because now I own all the rights to all the stuff that I create, all my characters, all the stories, all that stuff. Beyond that, I also work on music, vocally, and I also produce. So I'm like both, like the vocalist and musician, if that makes sense. They're probably both within the same category. Who cares though? Can go from like alt rock to like hyper pop to digicore, and that's like the ones that I really love messing with in general. It's alt rock and digicore. Honestly, like it was almost something that happened since like I was a kid. Like since I was small, I used to like drawing and making little comics and stuff like that, right? To kill time. I would like draw, make little stories, little comics and stories, play with toys and stuff, making like entire like scenarios in my head. It's like kept on, expanding on it till I got to like bigger stuff in art, more musical stuff in general. It's sort of like since I was small, I was kind of programmed that way in a way.
Like, what was the reaction from the people around you when you decided, like, this is what I'm gonna do?
They didn't take it too seriously. They were like, oh yeah, it's just a hobby, whatever. And like, it wasn't doing that good either, starting off. I would make like really trash songs, and like my art would be pretty bad too in general.
I feel like we all have to like make trash so first, right? Before we like get to the good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Like,
like all these people too, and like that would be like they wouldn't take it seriously, right? They'd be like, oh yeah, it's all right, and then they'd be like, so what else do you want to do besides this? Like that kind of stuff. So they'd like brush it off in a way and be like, oh yeah, all right, whatever. So what else are you gonna be doing besides that? But I kept working on it, right? So I kept working on like
mm,
music, improving my art, my skills, all of that stuff, my mastering, my mixing, etc. And I like came back to these same people showing my improved music, my improved sound, improved art, my vision. And once they saw like the improvement and they see that I'm trying to improve even more from that, and now they got like clearer, like more what's it called? Like a better executed version of the idea. And I'm starting to get like a better vision of what I'm trying to show them in a way. Now
mm.
that's when they were like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing now. Like that's when they're like, I see what I see what he's trying to do now. And that's when I saw them like take me more seriously and be like, yo, yeah, keep that up, like keep doing that, that shit sounds good. And then like recently I just showed them like a lot of my new improved stuff, like my actual current level stuff and how I'm improving. And they were like, okay, that shit sounds pretty fucking good, like let me know when you release more things.
How did you push through that initial discouragement? Because I feel like that's what cuts a lot of people off at the legs.
Well, I was thinking, yeah, I'm not that good at the moment, but at the same time, they don't work at the stuff I work with. So even if they tried to do the stuff that I'm doing, they would be doing worse than me or get to the same level that I'm at. But they don't, like they're not me. I'm the one focusing on this. It's like if they're doing a certain thing that I'm not good at. Like I'm good at art and music, but let's say they're doing something else beyond that, like sports. But let's say soccer, for example, or
Yeah.
basketball. They could be playing soccer or basketball, and yeah, they might not do as good, and I could be like, yeah, you're not doing as good or whatever. But at the same time, that's something that I can't be doing to the same level as them. It's something that obviously they're going to improve in as time goes by if they keep going at it. And musically, it's the same thing. Like I'm going to keep improving as I keep working on the music and stuff. And they
Yeah.
might judge it, but at the same time, they don't know the gaps and all of this stuff, or they might be aware of it, but
Yeah. It's like, okay, let's see you try. You know?
Sort of. It is like they let's say you look at LeBron James, Michael Jordan, like all these big players, right? For example, like I'm using sports as an example.
Yeah.
So let's say you see one of these big players, and like then you see your friend who goes out to play basketball or some shit like every weekend or so, and you're like, oh, they're never in the same level as these other fuckers, right? And it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, but they don't, like that's your friend who's just like playing there or doing whatever, right? Versus these people who do it as their passion, as like, their life. They do it all the time. It's like,
That's very
they're
true.
they're their thing that they practice often. They're always there doing that. Like that's their whole life. Like you if you focus on something, and you got to sacrifice a lot for it too. Like there's some sacrifices you got to make, and
Absolutely.
sacrifice can come in many forms. It can be like as small as being like, oh, I'm gonna not get as much sleep tonight, to sacrificing like relationships to a point, sacrificing free time. You're
Mhm.
going to sacrifice like your friends in a way too. Things that you have to like get in return, like get rid of in return for you to focus more on your goals and improvement.
You
Time
do.
is valuable. I do also focus on fashion, but that's more on the side. Does that make sense? It's more like of a future thing.
What is your main focus right now, artistically, would you say?
Yeah, I've been working on an album, but I've also been working on singles and being featured on other people's music. So I feel like it's a little bit to get my name out first, just so a few more people know me, and then it's dropping this album once like everybody like once I have like a good amount of people who know me, especially because I have like features and a lot of like work with bigger artists and a lot of my friends,
Mhm.
but they're just like bigger in numbers. But that's why I'm like I should probably release a bit more stuff by myself first, and then release all this stuff with all of my friends and everything, so that people aren't like, oh, this guy just got in because he got carried. So it's like I don't want
That
them to just like brush off everything to like, oh yeah, it's because he has other features, because that's not it. Like I put a lot of work in. Do like yeah, I do have like these songs with other features and friends and everything, but at the
Mhm.
same time, like you got to think about like those people wouldn't be on those songs if I didn't tell them like, hey, do you want to get on the song with me or something? Like I could just go ahead and release that by myself, but at the same time, a lot of these songs would be like what 2 minutes, maybe 2 minute songs, and I really like long songs like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, stuff like that. And it's just fun to collaborate with
Mhm.
people. Like, what's the purpose of like just working on music by yourself the entire time? That's kind of boring.
From the time that I met you and the music I heard back then, compared to the music that you make now, I've noticed like a significant like improvement in production, in like everything, in timing. Um, is that something that you notice yourself?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I notice myself. As I said, like how you sacrifice a lot of your free time, for example. That's the reason that you sacrifice a lot of your free time too. It's like
Mhm.
if a friend is like, "Yo, can we hang out this weekend?" Sometimes you gotta be like, "Nah, I'm gonna be focusing on the music things." And it's like sometimes even relationships could go that way if you're like really
Yeah.
going to be invested into it. Like sometimes it's gonna be like you gotta realize like you're not gonna be able to focus on a relationship, if you want to pursue
Mhm.
something. So you have to like sometimes cut people off, especially if they're asking for too much time from you. Like because that becomes really
Yeah.
draining.
What are some challenges that you currently face uh with creating music?
Most of it is personal. Yeah, most of it is personal. Like you could record something and then feel like you're not doing good enough, so you have to approach it in different ways.
Mm.
And then like having to see what's catchy. Like you could record something and you think it's good, but then after a while you're like, you know what, that wasn't catchy enough. If I notice when I'm more on beat, more on key, like that the improvement, yeah, I do notice it, and that's because that's where I like sacrifice a lot of the free time that I have. That's where I sacrifice relationships, friendships, and like things like that because I had to focus on my improvement. And I would spend like, hours, even days sometimes, spent months, like just constantly focusing on staying on beat, looking at the metronome, because I didn't used to use a metronome. And then like learning about how to be on key, different singing styles, all of this stuff, right? And that's how I noticed,
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I've been improving. Because back then, I would have never thought of this. I used to think it was just like you get a beat and you like sing over it and like whatever, right? But then I realized, like, oh, you have to get a beat. You have to make sure you're following the metronome. You have to be on beat. You have to be on key. Like all of this stuff, right? It's not just like get a beat and start to like sing on top of it and that's it. It's like autotune, for example. People think that because somebody has autotune, it's gonna like magically correct everything to sound perfect and how it should be. But no,
Mm-hmm.
if you use autotune but you're singing off key,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna sound bad no matter what because you have the autotune is just something to like boost the performance and give it like a more like unique style. Yeah, you have to be on key, and the autotune is just like a little extra layer to the voice because you cannot be
Mm-hmm.
off key and have autotune or it sounds like all like right, like all like distorted and like gives it just a shitty sound.
You put most of your life into it. Like, where does that work ethic come from?
Yeah, I feel like everybody should kind of do that, in my opinion. And those who don't, I feel they lack discipline. It's all about like just self discipline in the end. You need to have the self discipline to be like and hold on, it's not just self discipline now that I think about it either. Or two, I mean. It's also you gotta be stubborn. You have to be stubborn and have self discipline at the same time. So it's like if you want to do something, you don't give up and you have to be stubborn about it and really just like uh you know shape yourself to be what you want to be.
And what do you do on the days like where you're like, I'm just not feeling this? Like, how do you like push yourself to do it anyway? Because I feel like that's where a lot of people get hung up. Like, it's so tempting to go and do the fun thing, like play video games or go do anything
Honestly,
else,
you could take a break, but
sometimes.
yeah, honestly, you could take a break.
Mm,
But the thing that happens there a lot of times is that people overdo it.
mm,
It's like you could do it, but like don't overdo it. You could even do it like let's say 1 month. Like in 1 month, not an entire month break. I mean like in 1 month you have a small break of a few days or something where you just like play games and chill out a bit. But then you have to come
yeah.
back in and put like keep going like at the same level of work you were doing or even harder, like go in with even more, power. Like let's say you just spend an hour or two playing
Mm,
a game on the site or something. And usually that's what happens. Like I'm like, oh man, I'm kind of
mm.
like not doing well with music. I'm gonna go play a game, and then I play a game for like an hour. I realize that I'm trash at a video game, and I'm like, you know what? I should just stick to music, and I go back to making music right after that.
Do you ever encounter burnout because you put so many hours into what you do? Like, is burnout
I
ever
don't.
a concern for you?
People warn me about it so much, but I've been on this for years to the point I'm like, I don't know how you can think a burnout is going to happen when I've been going at it for years and right, like I don't experience it. Yeah, the only time burnout happened to me was when I was streaming, and that's because I
Mm,
truly didn't enjoy it too much. Like I was
yeah.
like I was at points where I was like, ah, oh, fuck, I got to stream later on tonight, and like, oh man, like
Mm,
I have to do this at this time. I can work on it whenever I want. And like it doesn't burn you out because it's like if you're tired of working on one song, you just change over to the next song and like you work on something else, but you're still working
mm,
on music, but you're having fun with it. In streaming, it's
yeah.
like no matter like if you're already tired of streaming, you can't jump to another, stream or something like that per se or
It's that audience expectation too, right? Like if you build any
Oh yeah.
iota of an audience, they expect you to be there.
Yeah, I used to be a streamer before I was a musician.
Like, so if you get tired of one project, you just jump over to another song.
Yeah, like if you're tired of one song, you're like, fuck, like I'm just not feeling this one song right now. Like I'm kind of tired of working on it and just scrapping and reworking. Like once that's happening quite a bit and you're just feeling tired, that's when you should like just like don't like delete the song and never work on it again. Like just put it in the vault, you could say, or like put it on the side for a bit, work on something else, and then like once you're like your energy is back up, then come back to this other song with this new energy where you're like, oh yeah, I feel like I can work on it again. And I feel like some people who don't know how to do that, like they quit and they don't come back to that, and
Yeah.
I think that's really bad work ethic.
I feel like that's a healthier mindset to have too, and actually can be applied to like any kind of art.
Sort of like that. It's like don't quit, just like put it on the side for a bit, then pick it back up.
Mm,
It's in a
yes.
way you could say it's like exercising. If you're tired of doing weights, just or like push-ups or something, like just get a small
Mm.
rest and then get back to it.
And
Like you don't
always
have to
skip
be
leg
doing it
day.
the whole time.
Always skip leg day.
Never. Every single day is everything. You got to give the full workout every single day, not just focus on one part of the body.
Who's been the biggest influence on you in your life?
One of the biggest people was Kanye West, and not many. Like it's stupid that not many people like him, but I don't care. For me, that's like you know something that an artist should strive for because he says whatever the fuck he wants, and as an artist, you should say whatever you want.
And that is a work ethic to aspire to, because he was a producer before he was even um I think he was a producer before he even started making his own music.
Yeah, he was just he would just make beats, and then later on, like he started saying like, hey, you know what? I want to make my own thing. I don't just want to be known as like, oh yeah, the guy who makes beats, the producer.
Who or what has been the biggest influence for you in your personal life outside of art?
Uh, before I answer that one too, I also want to like go ahead and say that other artists that also influenced me was Prince
Hmm. Oh,
and
hell yeah.
XXXTentacion, Lil Peep, and David Bowie.
Oh, I love Bowie.
Bowie.
He reinvented himself so much. Like, that was his entire career.
Those five people are like really big influences, of course. And like of course there's other stuff that like inspire me in my art and music. One of them
Mhm.
actually is in this poster right up here. Which is Afraid of Monsters. And the creator of that is Andreas Ronberg, which is actually a really good friend of mine. He also created Cry of Fear. It's a pretty good game. It's a mod of Half-Life 1. And like every time I talk to Andreas, he's just been like the most chill dude I known. Really inspiring. I really love a lot of his work and like art style stuff. And that's like been one of the main driving motivations in a lot of like my own things. When Andreas first made a game, they were like what 13 when he made Afraid of Monsters,
Mm-hmm.
and then he proceeded to make Try Your Fear with his team.
Mm-hmm.
And like it was just a small thing that he was doing for fun basically, and it ended up becoming like this huge like I'd say it's one of them. I don't know if it's well known, but in my opinion, it's one of the
Mm-hmm.
best horror games out there ever. Like the way it
Mm-hmm.
just created a whole world of like creators that were inspired by it too. Because I'm not the only person that's been inspired by Andreas Ronberg's creations too.
No, and that must be the best feeling too, to have someone come to you and say, "Hey, like your work inspired me to go and do this." Like, I can't even
Oh yeah,
imagine.
I've told him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've told him about it.
How do you feel about it?
Oh, he was happy to hear it. He's like, "Yo, that's cool. Like, I fuck with what you're doing, pretty much." And like, if there's someone that I like, also like, I'm thankful for the inspiration and everything for it too. It would be Funeral
Mm,
because he was like one of the first people that I ever like collabed with musically.
mm,
And when I remember like talking to him, showing him like a few beats that I had, and I'm like, "Yo, can we work on this together?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, let's like go ahead, send it over. I'll like send you a verse, and you like work with that." And he said he did that a few times with me with a few songs, and like through that, like with Funeral and stuff, and like meeting friends of his and talking to people around his community too. I also was able to like build my own like group of friends, and we all started working on our own things together. So like a big things to Funeral right there too.
so it's kind of like a musical ecosystem in a way. Um, like if I think of
Yeah,
it as like, those family tree graphs, it's like one person
yeah. There's
inspires like
also
five, to
yeah,
like
there's
go and
also a
do
lot of
their own thing.
competition in there, of course.
Oh, absolutely. Like back before the internet, you had access to whatever was in your locale and like whatever was in like a magazine or something, right? And now you can
Yeah.
literally just like go on your computer and like you have access to like everything. And I feel like how do you feel about the oversaturation? Like do you feel like it's oversaturated and that it does make it a little harder to succeed as an artist?
Oh, definitely. But I feel that's all of life in general. I feel like
Mm,
everything in life in general over time just becomes like oversaturated. And like everything for every sort of position, like every area is becoming hard to compete in as time goes by. Because back then there wasn't as many people either, and like a lot of things were
yeah.
more like, yet to be discovered. Now with so much stuff becoming discovered, so many people being around, it's like what could have been like the best thing back then could become
Mm.
generic over time. And like now, because you want to get into what was popular back then, now it's normalized. So it's hard to get in now because it's like there's so much there already.
Like I could download several music programs on my computer, get a microphone, and make something half decent if I had any talent, you know.
Yeah,
Whereas back in the
like
day, like you
now,
had to have access to like a studio,
mm, yeah, like now you do have a lot of musicians, like a lot of like a lot of the people around the internet now claim to be a musician or an artist or something. But
Mhm.
like then there's the good thing is that now even though there's a lot more musicians, there's also like many different genres. So it's not really much of a competition against every musician out there. It's also a competition of the people within the genres you work with. So it's not like you're competing against every musician out there in the world. Because it's like, yeah, what is a rapper trying to do competing with a like classical music artist?
I feel like it's also like a competition with yourself too, for some people. Um,
No, definitely a big. It's definitely always a competition with yourself more than anything,
mhm.
because you always have to do better and keep competing with yourself to one up yourself each time.
Do you feel that there are a lot of like copycat artists out there that just go, "I hear what this person is doing. I'm gonna like
Oh,
tweak it
there's
ever so
there's way too
slightly."
many. There's way too many. Uh, like where I work in Døth, like I there's some artists who were able to make their own unique thing, and then like there's these small artists who kind of like want to do the same thing, and they're like clones of each other. That's like what my whole lyrics were about in "Praying on Our Downfall" in Planet was. My verse was talking about how a bunch of like these like artists sound like clones and shit, like they're not doing their own thing. And it's just like, yeah, you all sound like clones. You don't sound unique. You're not doing anything special. Like, get the fuck out of here. You know, you're not special. And
Yeah,
that's what I really don't like about people. It's people who try to find cheap ways around it when they're not like really putting their passion into it. Like they're just in it for their own greedy motives.
that sounds like TikTok's entire meta. um,
It's pretty
co-
much. avoid deception and reject false icons. There's a lot of deception going on.
Mm.
What one side may seem like they want the best for you, that could be the deception. Because always remember that for comfort, there is things that stunt your growth. Is that the word? You need to find comfort within discomfort, and
Mm.
that way you will find growth. Getting out of your comfort zone is what allows you to grow. And all this chaos, all this discomfort, just all this mess, I feel like it's what helped me grow because I couldn't rest. And by
Mm.
not resting, not finding comfort really, and not allowing myself to find comfort either. Like when people are like, "Oh, like that was good," and I'm like, "Nah, that's not good," and like I'm not comfortable at this pace. Like I want to grow more. Like just don't get comfortable.
Let's say there's an artist, a young artist that's watching this right now. And they're pretty unsure because they're being torn every which way about whether they should do their thing, follow their passion, or do a 9 to
Mm-hmm.
5 stiff thing. What advice would you give to that kid?
Surround yourself with people who got knowledge in music, with other artists, other musicians. Find for ways to improve, and don't be a fucking cookie cutter version of someone else. Just find your own thing. Just have fun with it. Keep experimenting. Don't be a fucking cookie cutter of someone else. That shit's whack. And
Hell yeah.
like I cannot stress this enough. Find yourself friends and people who work within the same, like
Mm.
sphere of what you're focusing on. Because like it's kind of a cliche, I guess you could say, but it's a cliche because it's true. Where like the people you surround yourself with is like the sort of things you get. So if you surround yourself with good musicians, people who are focused on this thing, and that becomes your focus, that's what's going to be what you're doing.
What is your favorite word?
Wow, wow,
What is your least favorite word?
wow, wow.
What turns you on?
All of the beautiful people looking and listening right now, especially you. Yeah, especially you, John, back there watching. I know you're probably cooking something right now.
What sound or noise do you love?
Oh, sound or noise, thunderstorms.
What would you be doing if you weren't an artist?
I guess we'll never know.
Ho ho! If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I don't know. I don't care.
Awesome. Well, Åzzie, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you further. And I'm going to leave all the links down below for where people. And there he goes. He gone.
Pretty boy.